So let me know when we are on. So good morning, everyone. I call to order this regular meeting of council for Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024. And in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, I acknowledge that we are gathered in the heart of Treaty 7 territory in southern Alberta. This land is home to the Blackfoot Confederacy, consisting of the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani First Nations, also the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and our most adjacent Indigenous neighbors, the Stoney Nakoda, comprised of the Bearspaw, Goodstoney, and Chiniki First Nations. Further, we're located within the Rocky View Métis District within the Battle River Territory, District 4. The town of Canmore is committed to working to live in right relations and to advance truth and reconciliation as we acknowledge the many Indigenous peoples whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. I'm grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. As we are all treaty people, we each have an ongoing responsibility to protect and honor all life. Turning now to the agenda for today's meeting, are there any changes? Seeing none, I move that we approve the agenda for April 2nd, 2024 regular meeting of council as circulated. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And now we have something very interesting today. It is Poetry Month, and so we thought we'd try something a little bit interesting and different here. Well, we don't do proclamations. I certainly love live performance. And so I am going to be calling upon Carol Thornton to come forward and share a couple of her poems with us. As introduction, Carol is an Albertan, but spent 15 years in the UK, where she studied poetry at Oxford, and with England's Poet Laureate, Andrew Motion. Her work has been published in Canada, the US, England, Ireland, and Romania in translation, and she was longlisted for the CBC Poetry Prize. She is currently working to complete a creative nonfiction manuscript. Carol, welcome. Please come forward. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor Crowsert and members of council.
Thank you for being here, and please, whenever you're ready, we look forward to you sharing with us.
Thank you. April is National Poetry Month, instituted by the League of Canadian Poets, and the theme for this year is weather. As the League states, weather dictates the rhythms of our lives from coast to coast. I've brought two short poems. The first travels from the sweetness of summer through the chill of a couple of winters to the warmth of spring. It was inspired by a dream. Threshold. I leave the trail that leads to the pasture, jump the shallow ditch, stoop between barbed wire strands. A barb catches, tugs at the back of my shirt. I slip past aspen, spruce, dark violets, mountain bluebells wet with dew. Inhale the tang of last year's leaves becoming earth. A mushroom breaks against my foot, stipe firm, resistant. Deeper in, fields, fences, even sky have disappeared. At a slight sweet scent, my heart surges, urging me forward, but my step slows. Sparrows and chickadees call and chatter. This place, here at the edge, perhaps my favorite. Then suddenly sky as forest opens into garden. Sweet peas, rose, white, lavender climb at its edge. Promiscuous hollyhocks powder my sleeve with pollen. A ruby, buzzing, darts from bloom to bloom on rhododendron, delicate as breath. Hibiscus shoulder high, lemony gardenias, buttercups big and bright as moons. A fear takes root and ripens that this time may be the last. I stay until my shadow disappears. One winter, then another pass. The sky is close. A cold breeze stirs the leaves. The birds are still. A canvas bag weighs heavy on my shoulder. The hollyhocks are dead, gray, shredded stalks. Dry leaves rasp against the sweet pea netting. The ground is chickweed, vetch, pale hedysarum. But here, a bloom, and there, saucy, defiant. I reach into my bag, take out a trowel. The sun begins to warm my back. A birdsong, distant, nears. As I thought about today, I didn't know if we'd still have snow in Canmore, but we sure do at my house. The voice you hear in this last poem is the voice of snow. The preferences of snow. What I love about clouds is their calm carry. What I hate about clouds is the sudden drop. What I love about pines is their huddle beneath me. What I hate about pines is their shaking me off. What I love about this magpie is the shadow she casts on my skin. What I hate about this magpie is the mar of her twiggy tracks. What I love about the wind are the contours it sculpts. What I hate about wind is this confining, polished crust. What I love about sun is our golden glitter. What I hate about sun is her constant insistence on cheerfulness. What I love about spring is the chatter of bluebirds returning. What I hate about spring is the untidy uncovering. What I hate about spring is knowing it's time. What I love about spring is the fondness of her farewell. When you get home today, do read a poem. In all weathers of the coming year, may you wake up every day filled with anticipation for the important work you do, every resource you need to do it, and compassion and care for those you serve. Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you. All right, we'll now move to item D1, approval of minutes. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll move approval of the minutes, the March 5th, 2024 regular meeting of council as circulated. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And now we'll move to item G1. This is Bylaw 2023-36, Palliser Lane Perpetual Affording Housing DC District. Good morning. Welcome to council.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, members of council. Okay. All right, perfect. So that's certainly a really hard act to follow, but I'll do my best. Not quite the poet here. Good morning. My name is Annika Drost. I'm a development planner with the town, and today I'm here to present to you Bylaw 2023-36.
Didn't you know that during Poetry Month, all your reports are supposed to be in poetry?
I missed out on that one.
Okay, we'll let it go this time.
So this bylaw is an amendment to the land use bylaw to create the Palliser Lane Perpetual Affordable Housing Direct Control District. So just to give you a quick overview of where we are in the planning hierarchy with this application. So with the recently adopted Palliser Trail Area Structure Plan, the proposed bylaw amendment would create a new DC district within the land use bylaw, which aligns with the policy direction of the ASP. The DC district sets out this parcel-specific development regulations to guide proposed development on the site. The purpose statement, rather, of the proposed land use district is to develop affordable housing on Area 5, as described in the Palliser Trail ASP, in the form of multi-unit development of up to 6 stories. So Area 5 is indicated by the arrow in red on the land use concept map of our ASP. So the district is really the tool and mechanism to implement the policies of the ASP, and it needs to be in place before future development can be processed. So the subject site is located at 100 Palliser Lane, which is the orange or blue parcel on the slide, and it is adjacent from the existing Blackiston and Hector buildings to the north and the highway to the south. The application was made by Canmore Community Housing, which is the landowner for the application, and it does create a new district for this particular property. So we would be moving from the Palliser Lane Perpetually Affordable Housing Apartment DC District to the Palliser Lane Perpetually Affordable Housing DC District. So we removed the word efficiency. And so in terms of the changes, the most significant changes between the two districts is the building height and the parking provisions. In terms of the building height, we are increasing from 16 meters to 26 meters to accommodate the ASP's direction to allow up to 6 stories on this property. And furthermore, the ASP has a clear direction to remove minimum parking requirements to prevent the oversupply of parking. So by oversupply of parking, we really mean the base calculation of the parking stall count per dwelling unit is no longer applied, which would allow for more flexibility when determining overall multimodal transportation option for the development. And as such, the proposed DC district includes regulations that exempt perpetually affordable housing that is located on this specific property from the minimum automobile parking requirements. So a courtesy mail-out to area landowners was done, as we usually do with amendments, and we did receive some feedback from the Blackiston building, and the concerns included the preservation of sunlight and views, removal of parking minimums, as well as safety regarding the highway crossing. The proposed amendment is consistent with the ASP direction regarding height and parking, and more specific development aspects such as building orientation would be looked at the development permit stage when we look at reports such as sun shadow studies. And CCH has informed us that they are doing a public engagement session on April 17th, so they will be, residents will be able to voice their opinion and provide some feedback. And I just wanted to note that within the DC district that's included in your report, if you look at section 14.43.5, there's just an administrative typo there. So the subheading should actually say discretionary uses and not permitted uses on that line. And moving on to the recommendation. So administration recommends that council give first reading to Bylaw 2023-36 and schedule the public hearing for May 7th of this year.
Great, thank you very much. And just turning to the clerk's office, just on that editorial item, that's something that can just be corrected when it comes back to us. We don't need to have a motion around that. Okay, great, thank you. I do want to ask a question around parking. If you don't mind pulling up that screen or shot there of 14.43.8.1, yes. So as I read this, the expectation could be that no parking would be allowed just the way it's read. And so I have had some conversation with the planning department and Ms. Smithers, and I just wanted to confirm that the intent is actually that when an application is brought forward, that there would be a discussion around parking on site, but it just doesn't have a minimum requirement That's the intent of this section, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. So we would still expect that there is parking provisions on site, and we would likely not proceed with approving anything that doesn't provide parking requirements unless there's some serious rationale behind it. With this provision, the intent is definitely to continue providing parking requirements, but not have, not apply the base calculation that we use. For instance, in this case, it is there would likely be an apartment building proposed, and the base calculation would be 1 stall per unit. So we would provide some flexibility as to maybe some other multimodal options.
Excellent, thank you. And that certainly aligns with what the report indicated as far as the concerns that were raised that would be dealt with at the development permit stage. Just as a heads up to everyone, should this pass first reading and go to a public hearing, when it comes to second reading, I'll likely be proposing an amendment to this section to provide greater clarity around the fact that residential use automobile parking will also be dealt with at the discretion of the Development Authority at the time of the application.
Okay.
So, okay, thank you for that. Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you for your presentation, Mr. Roast. My first question was similar to His Worship's with regards to sort of some chatter that I've heard around the community that they fear that this amendment or this, provision means that there will be no parking on site, and that's clearly not the case. Is it typical that the traffic and parking study would come at DP, or is it typical that it would come, which I'm guessing is going to inform what parking looks like on site? Is it typical for that study to come prior to the development permit or alongside to inform the development permit?
So any type of studies that would inform the development specifics, such as parking, would come at the development permit stage.
Gotcha.
So within the area structure plan policies, there is a requirement for an integrated parking management study, which is slightly different than the parking study.
Yes, I know.
But so we would be looking at basically balancing maybe more bicycle parking for a reduction in some of the car parking stalls.
And you would be looking perhaps at adjacent buildings that might development around there as well, because I believe within the ASP there was more conversation about not sort of a global parking as opposed to just a site specific. No.
Sure.
Thanks.
Mr. Weldon?
Hello. So as Ms. Drostad just stated, so the intent is for the reduction of or not the reduction, but to eliminate or exempt the minimum parking. Mm-hmm. So, but in terms of the parking study, or looking at it more comprehensively from the area, so the area structure plan did direct that. But at the time of the development permit application for this particular study, they would be looking at the parking strategies for this site, but also looking at it comprehensively for the neighboring sites too.
Right, that's why it's called an integrated parking management plan.
That's right.
Why I was trying to tease that concept out.
Okay.
And my question is the same with regards to the sun shadow study. Is that something that's typical at development permit, or is that something that, so we're not doing anything different here than we would do for any other development that we see market-wise within the town of Canmore?
That is correct.
Wonderful, thank you
That's
so
right.
much.
You bet.
Thank you for those questions. Councillor Frobert.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Ms. Drost, for your presentation. You talked a little bit about the fact that removing parking minimums provides flexibility for multimodal transportation planning. Can you help me understand how that works?
So for example, when we have that integrated parking study available, we would be looking to the developer to basically rationalize having less parking stalls, or maybe have a few units without a parking stall if they know that there is an appetite for tenants moving in that may want to have just bicycle parking available. So we would be looking at balancing that.
Awesome. And so it sounds like more information goes into what that number of stalls would be, but it's not the number of units in the building that informs that. It's more that work of the study and the understanding sort of the dynamics of other types of transportation options available.
Correct. We'd be looking at all the options at that point. And
How does removing parking minimums help us achieve other outcomes and goals like affordability?
so for the affordability piece, so parking is an expense that is often tagged on to the tenant. And by removing some of the parking stall requirements, there is a lower cost associated with providing parking, and therefore the units might be more affordable at that point if the price is reduced based on that.
So if I was like a no-car household, I could then achieve a lower cost of my accommodation because I could find a unit that doesn't have a price connected to parking.
Correct. So those would be options we'd be looking at, and obviously it's up to the landowner to make those policies. But yes, there would be, for example, for other apartment units where we would pay the additional cost to have a second stall. So that would be an option that the landowner can look at.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Great, and thank you for those questions. And so all of these questions, they go to what this ASP has done, and that's decoupled parking from a unit count and looking at more holistically a neighborhood-wide approach to dealing with parking and other transportation matters. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah. So other options that we would consider would be like car sharing.
Yeah.
So we would be definitely looking at the holistic approach for this development.
Okay. And my understanding is that we're not the only ones doing that. That's actually a practice that is becoming more common in other municipalities, and I think Banff is looking at that right now as well. Is that correct?
Hello again. Yes, that's correct. Many other municipalities in Alberta have already eliminated minimum parking standards, such as the city of Edmonton. I do believe Banff is looking at that currently as well. So yeah, it is a common practice now.
Great, thank you very much.
You bet.
Looking to council to see if there are any other questions. And Councillor Ma, you can just raise your hand if you have one. Okay. Okay. All right, I see none. Thank you very much for your presentation. I will now move the council give first reading to Bylaw 2023-36 and schedule a public hearing for May 7th, 2024. Speaking to the motion, the question before us is, does this align with the ASP? And are the terms within the bylaw reasonable and consistent with our practices? And I believe it is both. While there is the one clarification around parking that I'll bring a motion at second reading, should this proceed to that point, I believe that this bylaw achieves what was envisioned through the ASP, and so I will definitely be supporting first reading. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I'll be supporting this first reading. I, too, echo your statements regarding that this mirrors what we've seen in the actual area structure plan. And it's exciting. This is the first parcel to be developed under that area structure plan. And so, you know, it's also quite a substantial unit count as well, which is exciting for the town of Canmore and for the residents of Canmore. I really appreciate the fact that we had the opportunity to talk about what minimum parking requirements actually are, as opposed to what people think they are. And I think that there's still more room for some education with that regard. It is definitely more of a newer concept within North America, especially within Western Canada. But I would say that, you know, we talk about letting the market decide, and we've never really done that with parking. We say, let the market decide, you want this unit, how many, you know, parking stalls do you want? But then we actually cram in stalls that maybe are not necessary. So I recollect 2 years ago, there was quite a few excess parking stalls that were up for auction through town auction because the buildings themselves did not want them nor could support them. And the cost of a parking stall is anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000, depending whether it's open air or underground. And that's quite a burden for somebody to carry over 25 years when you're looking at a mortgage. Anyhow, I am pontificating. So I'd be happy to support this, and I look forward to the public hearing, and I look forward to having this opportunity to have more of a back and forth with those that attend the public hearing after the fact in terms of education, and hoping that this is the kickoff to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And just the other day, I heard because of the escalation of costs that underground parking is actually significantly higher than 50,000 now. I think it's like 75, 80,000. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mayor Crowser. I too will be supporting this motion. I'm really excited about some new opportunities and new direction that we are going to explore. And I too think that there's a lot of education in the towards the public or with the public and from the public with what this could mean. I'm excited to have that conversation. I'm excited for people to come forward with, to the public hearing, express their concerns, and help us as best we can deal with those concerns. So I'm excited for first reading and look forward to the public hearing. Thank you very much.
Councillor Ma.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, look, I'm happy to support this ASP. I feel what happens is with parking, there will be a sweet spot that we'll understand better as we get through the public hearing piece, as we see what's being presented by CCH. But I think we also need to bear in mind what you say yes to, you say no to something else. And I remember talking to a friend who was a big part of the Hawksbend project when they were creating that. There was one time when they actually changed their parking requirements, got rid of a couple stalls, and in the end were able to house 2 more families. And so there's a societal benefit, and I think we will understand where it is, that sweet spot, as we navigate car spaces and providing housing. So happy to support. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor. I would like to also comment on the other concerns that were raised and look forward to hearing directly from people. Certainly safety is very much on this council's radar. We have long been talking about some form of a crossing of the highway, whether that be an underpass or an overpass, and that's certainly on our radar. There's a number of things that have to come together for that to happen, including sufficient population and have that funding available. But it's definitely something that we're looking to bring forth in the coming years, the exact time to be determined. And of course, we were very happy that our advocacy around animal exclusionary or wildlife exclusionary fencing was approved by the province, and so there will be an element of that as well in that area. So just wanted to speak to that. And then as far as views, this is a common issue in any development because it represents change to the surrounding neighborhood, and change can be difficult. However, it's also easy to jump to conclusions as to what that could be looking like. I remember with 7th and 7th right downtown Canmore, there was huge speculation as to how this would just darken the streets and darken the surrounding areas and block views. You know, there was a depiction that was created showing this big box on 7th and 7th. And yeah, if it was that big box, it would have been horrendous. But was actually what was created fits very well and does not block views or cast shadows. And there's ways that these can be done, and you take account of elevation changes, etc. So it's really important that before people get too fearful, that we wait for that information to come out and have the actual information at hand to deal with. So that will also be dealt with in due course. Anybody else wishing to speak to this motion? Okay, seeing none, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And now I'm going to call a 10-minute break. And we're going to, actually 12-minute break, we're going to return at 9:45. And we're moving to agenda item G2, Downtown Business Improvement Area Tax Rate Bylaw 2024-10.
Good morning, Mayor and members of Council. This morning you have the Downtown Business Improvement Area, the BIA, Tax Rate Bylaw 2024-10 in front of you. The recommendations are that Council approve the Downtown BIA's 2024 budget as presented and give 3 readings to the Downtown BIA Tax Rate Bylaw. This will then allow us to include these amounts in the annual tax notices and collect them on behalf of the BIA. I'm here to introduce our guest speaker, Grady McMahon, Executive Director of the Downtown Canmore BIA, who will speak to the budget and present the levy rates.
Great, thank you. And Ms. Gibbons, welcome back to presenting to Council.
Thank you. I was just saying, sometimes it feels like I never left.
Mr. McMahon, welcome to Council.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Should be good to go. Good morning. Again, thank you for having me. We're here today regarding the Downtown Business Improvement Area Tax Rate Bylaw and 2024 budget. Recommending the Council approve the Downtown Business Improvement Area revised budget as presented, and that Council give first, second, and third reading to Bylaw 2024-11, the Downtown Business Improvement Area Tax Rate Bylaw. As it says, each year the BIA's board establishes a proposed annual budget which is submitted to Council for approval, but if there are changes to the levy review, a revised budget is presented. The rate structure established to raise the required revenue to meet the budget requirements, and the levy is then collected by the town on behalf of the BIA. Council is required to approve BIA's annual budget prior to passing the annual tax rate bylaw and must pass BIA tax rate bylaw annually by May 1st as per the NGA. With the BIA tax, the Downtown BIA Levy Schedule A, on pages, I believe, 24, 25 of the agenda, the levy is adjusted to $130,729. The 2024 rate structure based on locations is in the document there, adjusted for the new year. The budget, revised budget, again, I believe on page 22 of the agenda package, has been adjusted to account for the $8,943 difference in the levy amount to be collected. Difference of note on here is the director salary and benefits as we've gone through some changes over the last couple of years. On that point, the protracted search for a new candidate, the board had determined to make the position a full-time salaried position plus health/wellness benefits. The board had adjusted the salary from $65,000 to $75,000 in order to try and have a broader pool to draw from. Recommendations, Council approve the BIA revised 2024 budget as presented and give the first, second, and third reading to the bylaw.
Great, thank you.
I ripped through that probably too fast, but
That's right.
first time, so.
No, thank you very much, and welcome to your new position.
Thank you.
And Ms. Vandervoort, thank you for the service that you've provided to the organization as well. And I appreciate you presenting this today. I think there's going to be some questions for clarification. One is, the first one I have is for Ms. Gibbons. The budget sheet that's presented as attachment 1, it has 4 columns, the third one being the 2024 budget revised. Is that the column we're approving? We're not approving the 2025, right?
That's correct. We are just approving today the revised 2024 budget. Mr. McMahon and I actually had a conversation about this. Historically, we had included prior years and future years for context.
Okay.
But for clarification, it is just 2024 that's being approved. In future years, we might remove that additional column just to make it clearer.
Right. So it's free for the organization to be making changes to the 2025 budget, and they're not worrying that it's It's already been approved by council. We're
No,
just doing
it's
24.
absolutely just for
Perfect.
contextual purposes.
Great, thank you. Mr. McMahon, I had a couple other questions around the budget, and that is, I do see a pretty extensive change around, there's a revenue, there was sublease expense that has gone down greatly, and I guess that was renting out a space to another party, and then also the lease expense dropped greatly. Is there a change then that triggered those changes?
Yeah, the way our office space was set up, we were in a 2,000 some odd square foot space. We were leasing out about 3/4 of it. When our lease came due at the end of this past year, we shuffled around the way the space was laid out. We've taken on a 303 square foot space, about 23% of the space that was there. The rest is now in a different business. So we're paying less on rent. We don't have a sublessee anymore. So we just strictly have our own space. The only combined item is utilities.
Okay. So is that where the revenue for sublease expenses is now still $2,500 because you're receiving a share of the
Correct.
utilities? Okay,
Yeah.
great. And the other question I had was around the Town Center Grant Fund.
Yes.
It's in for $77,209, and I was wondering if you could speak to that amount.
We have carryover from last year, so we didn't use the full amount in 2023.
Okay.
So we've carried over the additional 27.
Right,
and
okay,
change.
because I thought that there was a $50,000 max.
Correct.
So that is a combination of this year and the carryover.
Correct.
That makes sense then. Looking to Councillor Faubert for questions.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon, for your presentation. I'm new to the BIA board as the council rep, and you're new as the executive director. We're heading into an AGM soon. I just wanted to ask you to share with council, what is it that you're excited about or looking forward to in the next year for 2024 in terms of the work that this budget will allow the BIA to do?
I think excited just because with the new AGM, we have a number of openings on the board that we need to fill. So there's going to be a lot of new faces. I was only on the board as a local business owner for less than a year before transitioning into the director role. So there's 2 or 3 of us that are fresh to the board, fresh face in myself, seeing the new people come in. I think it gives us an opportunity to just kind of refresh. It's been a bumpy year or 2 with the BIA and just transition in leadership. I think looking at what we have the potential to do to help promote downtown, the activations that we have the ability to do through some of the grant money and other things that have already been working my way through, trying to find different avenues for revenue, grant funds anyway. I think with that, it gives us the opportunity to really engage the town. I'm a new face as far as this position is concerned, obviously. I'm spending my time going door to door, talking with people, introducing myself, finding out ideally the people who are willing to share anyway, what they're looking for from the BIA. Getting that information, kind of working that towards a plan for the board, having a new strategic planning time with the new board as it comes on board here shortly. I know it's a very vague answer, but there's the opportunity for us to do considerably more given our funding and the fresh faces that are coming onto the board, I think is the big thing.
That's perfect. That's perfect. That's not vague.
Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. McMahon. Yeah. I was pleased to see a couple of changes in the budget. An increase to the ED salary was long overdue, in my opinion. I was looking at the tax rolls in Schedule A, and I don't think that any of the tourist homes that are operating out of downtown are listed in that roll. Is that correct?
That is correct. So that is something as we move forward into this year, like to put together a work group with our new board and really address kind of where our funding is. As Ms. Van Voort had mentioned last year at this same meeting, that it's something that we're looking towards doing, because at the moment, the largest retail space on Main Street pays the same amount as a however many room hotel. So there's opportunities there, again, for us and funding to try and boost a little, to be able to spend a little bit more to promote downtown better and more completely. But it's definitely something from a work group perspective that we'd like to get going, so that we can address short-term rentals, vacation, hotel property, and try to make it a little more, I guess, a little more fair, a little more even. With that, I guess looking towards revenue stream moving forward as well, instead of sporadic jumps in the tax rate, looking at a more even increase over time. But if we're able to leverage a little bit more from those different properties, the increases for everyone else could be slightly more controlled. Yeah. Looking back over however many years, there's been drastic jump and then nothing, a minor jump and then nothing. If we can kind of keep it on a more even pace, but still balancing the funds.
Yeah, I think that sustainable funding model is critical, and when you're not putting in any sort of increases, especially due to inflation, you're essentially cutting your budget at the end of the day. Every year, yeah. Every year, and you know, I'm excited to hear that you guys are planning a strat plan. I think that's due, and I look forward to hearing what the businesses have to say about the future of the BIA. Best of luck in your role.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you very much for being here today in your presentation.
Thank you very much.
And with that, I'll move that Council approve the Downtown Business Improvement Area 2024 budget as presented. I will be supporting this motion. The questions I had were answered very well, and so I understand this budget. And as Councillor Graham mentioned, I appreciate some of the changes that were made. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. I'll now move that Council give first reading to Downtown Business Improvement Area Tax Rate Bylaw 2024-10. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? I'll just say that I appreciate that there were changes. It is actually concerning when you don't see the changes over time, because you do recognize that the organization's having less and less to work with, and therefore sustainability is brought into question over time. And so while this is a little bit more of a jump than one might expect a year over year, that seems to be something that will be looked at in coming years. So I appreciate that, and I will be supporting this. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. I'll now move that Council give second reading to Downtown Business Improvement Area Tax Rate Bylaw 2024-10. Anyone wish to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. I'll now move the Council give leave to go to third reading of Downtown Business Improvement Area Tax Rate Bylaw 2024-10. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And I'll move that Council give third reading to Downtown Business Improvement Area Tax Rate Bylaw 2024-10. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to new business. H1, National Indigenous Peoples Day Grant Funding. Ms. McLett, welcome to Council.
Good morning, Your Worship and members of council. As you can see, I am not Jeannie McPherson. She is on spring break with her children. So on behalf of Jeannie, I'm here looking for council's approval, if I can, for the recommendation to accept $19,250,000 in grant funding from the Banff Canmore Foundation and allocate the funds to support enhancements to National Indigenous Peoples Day program. I know it's a tough one to make a decision on. Just as some history, so we've been doing National Indigenous Peoples Day for a number of years. I think it started in 2016, held in different forms, from parades to dances. And we have been working year over year with our neighbors to understand what the nations want in and what would best reflect how to celebrate the heritage and culture and treaty rights of the Stoney Nakoda or the Iliara Nakoda. So we've had tremendous success in doing so, and with success comes growth in the program. And last year that came a little bit to a head. We had record attendance from the nation and grew our budget significantly. We tried to augment some of that with grant funding, not completely successful. So when the Banff Canmore Foundation approached us with a funding opportunity, we thought it was a great opportunity to say, okay, how can we utilize that to augment this growth that we're seeing and working in the nation, and the desires that the Stoney Nakoda have identified is important to them, not just in celebrating National Indigenous Peoples Day here in Canmore, but also on the nation, in the Poway, and how we can counter-promote. So part of the enhancements of the work that is being proposed, and I have to look at my notes here, is to have transportation both from Morley into Canmore on the day of celebration here in Canmore, but also on the actual National Indigenous Peoples Day, have bus transportation from Canmore into Morley and do some cultural training on what is powwow etiquette, what can we expect, and create opportunities to not have people in their cars, but using bus transportation both ways, so reducing environmental impact as a result, but also bringing that cross-cultural learning in place. And of course, the return of the Indigenous-led market, which was grant-funded last year for that program. So those are the enhancements that we're looking to bring forward, and that is augmenting the budget. The budget originally approved by council was $13,900. So augmenting that with another $19,250. And I truly hope council will support this, because we've already gotten notice that we were approved for that funding from the Banff Foundation. So the closing, the recommendation before council is that council accept the $19,250,000 in grant funding from the Banff Canmore Foundation and allocate the funds to support enhancements to National Indigenous Peoples Day.
Thank you, Ms. McLeod. Appreciate you stepping in and doing an admirable job in doing so with this very difficult decision. Yes. Do we accept the money or not? Looking to council to see if there are any questions. Seeing none, thank you very much. Well, I'm going to move that council accept $19,250 in grant funds from the Banff Canmore Foundation and allocate the funds to support enhancements to the National Indigenous Peoples Day program. I'm really quite optimistic, encouraged, curious as to how many people will take up the opportunity to go and see a powwow. It may be that this is an excellent introductory way of getting people to experience it. Going with a group, you feel maybe a little bit safer going into unknown surroundings. But having been to a number of powwows, I mean, it's really quite an interesting atmosphere and very powerful, and something that I really think that is just something to experience and treasure and to really absorb and take in. So I think this is an excellent idea. I'm seeing this as maybe a pilot project, or at least an introductory to people, and then encourage other people to go into the future. So I'm liking the way that this is going. Looking to see if there are any others that wish to speak to this motion. Councillor Ma.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you so much to BCCF just for giving us money this way. Like, this is really generous and kind. Also, I think what Mayor Krauser said about having an opportunity to go down to Manitini, to spend time on the reservation there and see how the nation is on one of their special days is a really great opportunity. So if you're in the Bow Valley, if you're in Canmore, and you've ever been curious about going down to Manitini, this is a day where you'd be really welcome, and do check it out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. And by the way, the foundation has dropped one of their C's. They are just now the Banff Canmore Foundation, and as part of their rebranding. Any other comments speaking to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And we'll now move on to H2, Property Tax Penalty Forgiveness Request, Tax Roll number 21512. Ms. Dalrymple, welcome to Council.
Thank you. All right. Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm here today with a request from a taxpayer asking Council to forgive the penalties that have been applied under compassionate reasons. Historically, Council has reviewed requests on a case-by-case basis, and review on a case-by-case basis ensures proper consideration and reflection is given to confirm that the taxes are collected according to legislation, local bylaw, and in an equitable manner. In this case of Tax Roll 21512, the owners had traveled to their home in Ontario in the summer of 2022, and while residing in Ontario, one of the property owners became seriously ill, and they were unable to return to Alberta. This person was admitted to hospital in early January 2023, where they remained until their death in March of 2023. As this owner was the primary administrator of financial matters for the family, their surviving owner did not discover the property tax bill until their return to the Canmore property this winter, when they promptly made payment on February 12th for the 2023 levy. Administration has confirmed that the 2023 tax notice and all subsequent past due notices were all issued to the Canmore property mailing address. We also received a death certificate confirming the March 2023 death of one of the owners. It is the recommendation of administration that decisions on penalty relief be specifically justified to ensure that requests from taxpayers with similar circumstances are handled in a consistent and equitable manner. The basis for consideration when determining approval of tax penalty reduction is generally a question of facts, such as our administrative error, or compassion for circumstances such as extreme illness or death. In this case, the owners had paid property taxes on time for all of the previous 9 years that they have owned the Canmore property. The 2023 property taxes have now been collected as originally calculated, and the waiving of the penalties does not impact or redistribute any financial burden to other taxpayers. And you can see in the financial impacts of the report, the penalties have been broken down as the penalties were applied, and then there's an accumulative penalty balance, so you can see as it added up. So administration does recommend that council consider waiving the penalties as applied out of compassion for these exceptional circumstances.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Dalrymple. Looking to Council to see if there are any questions. Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for your presentation. Could you tell me, was this role on the TIPS program?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. I'm going to move that Council forgive the property tax penalties for roll number 21512 in the amount of $1,406.57. And speaking to the motion, there's been a number of these that I've heard over the years of requests for relief. As noted in the report, they're very seldom approved because they don't fall within what would be an appropriate reason for providing the relief requested. And in this particular case, I agree with the administration's recommendation that for compassionate reasons, we should grant this request. Councillor Hillstead.
I just echo your statement just now. This is one situation that I do think that waiving the fee makes sense. As you said, I've heard a fair many of these over the years, and there's, I think there's been very few that we have said yes to. So, but this is a situation that makes sense to me. So, I'm happy to forgive in this instance.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I will be supporting the recommendation in this report. And I would like to extend my condolences to the family in question. I can imagine that being in the situation where you're not the primary person that takes care of that part of the household and kind of being in the dark and on that, and then just the business of dealing with an ailing and then therefore deceased spouse would have been an incredible amount of work, never mind the work looking to get a penalty forgiveness, et cetera. So I guess this is one of those moments where it's really important for the public to understand how important it is that you're on the TIPS program if you can be. And as we develop as couples in our households, to understand how important it is to know sort of the bigger picture about where things are. But my condolences to this family. It must have been an awful period that they went through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And our final item for the day, item G3, appointment of clerks to the Assessment Review Board. Now, I don't think that there's going to be a presentation on this. It's pretty straightforward. The report speaks to itself. Before I make a motion, I'm just wondering if there's any member of council that has any questions. Seeing none, I will then move that council repeal the appointment of Janae Shepherd and appoint the following people as clerks of the Canmore Assessment Review Board for a term ending on December 31st, 2024. Megan Dalrymple, Property Tax Coordinator. Ann Can, Tax and Utility Customer Service Representative. Joy Luang, Tax and Utility Customer Service Representative. And Lisa Wong, Administrative Assistant. Anybody like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And I'll now move that we adjourn today's meeting. All those in favor? Carried unanimously.